All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I am Maya Peterson. I am Member Services Director with iNACOL. Thanks so much for making the time to join. I know everyone is crazy busy, and it's happy 2015, so thanks again for joining for the next in our leadership webinar series. A few housekeeping items and an orientation to the webinar format for those of you who are relatively new to Blackboard Collaborate. You can find the chat window docked on the lower left, and please type questions, comments, and responses there, and we'll be able to see and respond to you. I'll be monitoring those as well as Jonathan and our other moderators, so please don't hesitate to chime in. On the left there too, if you would like to raise your hand to ask a question or respond to a poll, those control buttons are on the left up there as well. And again, we'll try to monitor the chat room. If you're having technical difficulties, please don't hesitate to send me a chat or an email, and we'll try to get you situated. And so just really quickly, wanted to thank everyone for being with us today. As you all know, iNACOL is a mission-driven organization, and we're really working collectively with all of you to ensure that all learners have access to world-class education through quality blended online, competency-based, and personalized learning opportunities. We are working to advance the field of new learning models, including online, blended, competency-based, and personalized teaching and learning, in service of dramatic improvements for student outcomes. So we know that it's you, our members, and that we can pursue this mission because we believe that live learner outcomes and tomorrow's global future can be significantly improved. So this leadership webinar series is really designed to highlight some of the emerging solutions and thinking around innovation and transforming education. Providing a place where ideas can mix and mingle, and an avenue for you and our members to access practical information to implement next generation learning models so that we can better connect you with solutions and shared challenges. I'd like to introduce you to Tom Vander Ark. Tom is the author of Getting Smart, How Digital Learning is Changing the World, and Smart Cities That Work for Everyone, 7 Keys to Education and Employment. He is CEO of Getting Smart, an education advocacy firm, and partner at Learn Capital, an education venture fund, and he advocates for innovations and customizes and motivates learning and to extend access. We are honored to have Tom serve as our treasurer for iNACOL, and he is also director of the Imagination Foundation, Strive for College, and serves on several other nonprofit boards. So without further ado, I would like to turn this over to Tom. Tom, are you there? Are you able to grab the mic? I'm hearing you. Tom, are you able to grab the mic by hitting the talk button on the top left there?
Does that help? Does that work, Maya?
Yep. Thanks so much. I think everyone can hear you now. Thanks.
Perfect. Let's try that. 3 years ago, the Getting Smart team dove into research project that we called Smart Cities, and we cataloged innovations in learning in about 36 American cities. And in 2013, we stepped back and tried to figure out what we had learned from that investigation of innovation, and it became the book Smart Cities. We sent our initial lessons to 60 friends, and they all wrote blogs for us on Next Gen Learning, and we ran those about a year ago and compiled those into Smart Cities that work for everyone, 7 keys to education and employment. And we're going to share a couple of the lessons from that book, and we'll try to keep things super interactive. So I'll stop 4 or 5 times and ask for some contributions in the chat windows. So please keep it interactive, and I'll try to call out as many of those contributions as I can. Here's a quick agenda. Like iNACOL, we are very interested in the possibility of next generation learning. So I'll make a couple comments about that. Then we'll talk about classroom strategies for innovation mindset. That's really the first big conclusion that we reached in the book, that innovation mindset is really important. I'll make a couple comments about leadership and talent development, and then we'll wrap up with the iNACOL policy agenda. 2-minute backstory is that I became a superintendent in 1994, the year that state standards came into being in the state of Washington. And I think 20 years later, we have to admit that didn't work as well as we had hoped. It certainly has, I think, improved equity and our appreciation for the challenges of educating low-income kids. The other interesting thing is that in 1994, it was really the beginning of anywhere, anytime learning. That was the first year that the World Wide Web came to prominence. It's the year that Wikipedia started. And so suddenly by the mid-90s, anybody could learn anything anywhere, that there was a broadband connection. But these two worlds of standards-based reform and anywhere, anytime learning have proceeded on parallel paths. And until recently, I would say the last 5 years, starting in 2008 and 9, and then 2010 with the tablet explosion, the introduction of the iPad, we had the beginning of new tools and new learning environments created to leverage those tools. And as Maya said, we think at iNACOL that this is just a historic opportunity to improve achievement and completion rates here in this country and around the world. The next generation learning formula, as espoused by NGLC, which is an iNACOL partner, is threefold: blended, personalized, and competency-based. Personalized meaning a unique path for every learner. Blended meaning a combination of face-to-face. I think Julia Freeland from Christensen might be on, and this would be a good place to plug Blended, the new book by Horn and Staker. If you haven't read that, that is the new manual on the subject. And like iNACOL, we're really interested in competency-based. I think that has 2 components: kids show what they know and progress based on mastery. And Jim, have you already read Blended? Looks like you've been sharing it. So great book, and it is super practical for school leaders. I want to stop and just get a couple more comments about the tools in schools, the kinds of experiences, environments that you're excited about. So please throw a couple into the chat window, either a tool that you've seen has been really transformational, or a school environment that you have created or visited that you think is really cool. Last Friday, I got to visit the Metro School on the Ohio State University campus. It anchors the Ohio State STEM network, and it was just a super impressive environment, a great example of the best of what we've learned over 20 years plus new technology to create a really transformative environment. Anybody else want to share a tool or a school that they're excited about? Last week we also got to visit Ramtech, which is the most advanced manufacturing and robotics training center in the world. It happens to be in a high school career center in Marion, Ohio. and it's where high school kids and college kids and adults all learn robotics all together. It's really an extraordinary program. We saw a college senior that was one of 8 kids on the planet that are certified to teach robotics. Somebody at iNACOL mentioned Summit Public Schools. I was just mentioning a few minutes ago at the Kaufman School here in Kansas City that Summit is, I think, doing the most important work in American education because they're designing schools, organizational design, plus designing a platform, the information design, the OD plus IT, probably doing the best job of both school design and platform design of anybody in the country. Anything else anybody wants to add to the list of things they're excited about? Keep adding, and I'm going to give you Nexus schools, our blended schools in the upper Midwest. They're a flex academy. Kids go to school for a half day. Most of them are double shifted. They have 250 to 300 kids. I went to Lansing Nexus a couple times, and those are definitely worth visiting. Merit Prep is a great school in Newark, another sort of an individual rotation model. So keep adding those, and I'm going to give you a 10-minute list of 10 things that I'm really excited about. I think the best example of personalization is the School of One model. It's now run by newclassrooms.org. They're serving about 15,000 kids in a couple dozen sites. It's a blended middle school math program, 8 different stations. My favorite station is in the foreground, small group instruction. Each one of these students has demonstrated that they're ready for that lesson on that day in that modality. So I think it's a real gift. Marshalltown, that sounds really cool. I don't know about that. Cedar Rapids, big project. Great. Thank you, Eric. We will add that to our list of things to check out. I love to see the level of engagement. One thing iPads have introduced is the magic of touch, and this is at a Las Vegas elementary school. I spent 50 minutes in this class with 5th graders, and I had never seen the level of engagement before. The combination of gaming and touch technology is really, I think, boosting learning productivity. Lake County Schools in Florida has 3 Gates grants. I didn't know that. That's cool. Thanks, Kathleen. We're going to need to check that out. Awesome. We'll put that on our list of things to learn about. It's exciting to see class rotation models coming to high school. Class rotation models have been common in elementary schools for 20 years, but we're seeing them added to school improvement plans like Houston Apollo, which combine best practices from schools and added a dose of blended learning. So you have 4 different learning stations, and in the background, a teacher working with a small group of kids. It's exciting to see blended learning empowering really great teaching. I love to see collaboration enhanced in the classroom, and this is one of at Eastside Prep, one of the first blended classrooms using Khan Academy, and I love these sort of low-tech hacks like this Blackboard need help, can help tricks that encourage peer-to-peer learning in a blended math classroom. Some new platforms are building that sort of peer learning in to them, like Buzz in Detroit. Project-based learning has been important for 50 years, but technology sure makes it a lot cooler, and nobody does it better than High Tech High in San Diego. What I really love is the work products that students put together and the way they exhibit learning in really authentic ways. As some of you indicated, Summit Public Schools, I think, are doing the best blended learning in the country. 2 things that I like about them: the individual playlists for students that prepare them for really meaty projects, And second, I think their team is the most thoughtful about student outcomes of any team in the country. That I love the way they think about content knowledge, cognitive skills, habits of success, or those non-cognitive, work skills that are super important, as well as expeditions, work experiences. And they have ways that they track all four of those outcomes. Summit Public Schools is headquartered in Redwood City. They have great new schools like Summit Denali in the picture is in Sunnyvale, just north of San Jose. And they're opening right near our office in Tacoma in 2015. They also have an East Bay school. I think they have 7 schools open now, and they'll have 9 with Tacoma and Seattle. It's really the best and most innovative secondary network on the planet. And the thing that makes them really special is they're thinking really hard about student experience and then combining a captivating learning environment with a really high functioning platform. So worth a school visit if you can. Another place that's worth visiting is the EAA in Detroit. They took over the 12 worst schools in Michigan, and they've created a very cool competency-based environment. I love how the K-8 school is now broken into 19 different levels. So this is level 13 in ELA, about a 6th grade classroom, and kids can now tell you I'm in level 13 in math and level 11 in reading, and it's really broken the stigma of kids that are working well below grade level. Great platform called Buzz that they developed in partnership with Agilix. Those are schools worth visiting, and Buzz is a platform worth looking at. We're seeing more student-centered and competency-based. This is a great school district, Kettle Moraine, just outside of Milwaukee. These they have 4 charter schools that are created within existing facilities and authorized by the district. KM Explore is an elementary. They split an elementary in half, and half of it became the student-centered competency-based. A good example, if your community, if you're not ready to flip the whole system, take half an elementary school and create an innovation zone like this. You see they found something innovative to do with their old textbooks. They turned them into coffee tables and end tables. But a great student-centered environment. And then the high school has 3 flex academies. One is a performing arts school, KM Perform. One is a global studies school, where every kid is taking 2 languages and working on global studies projects. They have a 3rd health sciences classroom. And so the cool thing about these flex schools is 2 teachers and a platform partner can open one of these schools in a matter of months. They're very easy to stand up. They create great options for kids, and they give you a very good example of competency-based learning. So I was just at a high school this morning, and I said, start a flex academy for 50 kids in the fall. It'll give your teacher leaders a chance to fly, and it will give everyone else a chance to see a personalized student-centered learning environment. It's cool to see flex and really high-level career education coming together. This is Career Path High in Salt Lake. It's a high school at a technical college. Students take high school classes online, on-site in the morning, and then train for job certificates in the afternoon. You can see diesel mechanics and nursing assistants and robotics. Another example of that would be GPS education partners in Milwaukee. They have 16 learning centers at manufacturing sites. Great flex schools where kids leave high school with a job certificate, sometimes college credit, always a job offer. Any additional resources? They don't get any extra money. They've sometimes got a grant to get started. So no, I think the answer is that most of them are often doing with less resources, not more. The last thing I'm excited about is just what this means for teachers, that blended and competency-based learning means better opportunities for teachers. 10 days ago, I wrote about opportunity culture and Nashville Public Schools. They're doing two cool things. They pay teachers, aspiring teachers, so instead of a student teaching assignment, a short assignment, these are long paid assignments. So it's better experience for teachers and a longer trial period for districts. And then Nashville's also experimenting with a teacher leader, a multi-classroom strategy. Take a look at opportunityculture.org to learn more about what blended learning can look like for teachers. With Brian Hassel from Public Impact, we wrote this paper a year ago about how blended learning can improve conditions and career options for teachers. So we're as excited about what this means for teachers as we are for students. So I want to pause and just get a couple of comments on, these are a lot of different schools and features, but what things do you think they had in common? Yeah, that's true, Ren. In most cases, they're competency-based, and they weren't based on seat time. Jennifer said they're dynamic. That's definitely true. These are a work in progress. They're definitely student-centered. None of the examples I showed would, the majority of the time, would they be in a teacher lecturing in front of kids in rows. Karen said student control of pace. That is sometimes true. There's at least higher agency environment, whereas our friends at Christensen would say some control over pace, place, and path and time. Keep adding to that list. Here's my list. As Larry Rosenstock would say, all these schools have a common intellectual mission. Many of them have a theme. They all have a clear focus. There down below you can see a picture of Metro, which is a STEM school in Columbus. So they're schools that are formed around big ideas. They have big blocks of time. As Rich said, they're flexible in both space and time. Kids show what they know, so there's frequent demonstrations of learning. They're highly personalized. There's a lot of relevant learning. They blend online and on-site. Kids move as they demonstrate mastery, and there's lots of rich professional learning. So it's a longer list of what, when you think of next-gen learning, of the key elements. I'd like to shift gears and talk about innovation mindset. This is really one of the most important hunches that we left the Smart Cities study with. It really struck me that mindset matters, and that the dispositions that kids bring to school are at least as important as the skills that they leave with. This is Scott. I met him on Friday. He's one of the 8 kids certified on these FANUC robots. This kid is just, this career center at Ramtech Career Center has really turned this kid's life around, and he is now a good example of what I'd call an innovation mindset. So I want to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. I think of it as a combination of growth maker and team mindset. We've been fixated for 20 years on knowledge and skills, but as Duckworth and Dweck and then Paul Tuff and others have helped us come to understand, that mindset is it matters at least as much as how well our kids read and write for their future life success. And so now a lot of us are thinking not only of knowledge and skills, but the mindset and the dispositions that young people are developing. iNACOL thinks a lot about competency, which is really just demonstrated ability, and that's putting all 3 of these to work. So here's what mindset sounds like in a classroom. I can learn, I can do this, I can reach my goals. I often see evidence of that or hear that when kids are blogging, when they're writing, or when they're presenting. I'd love some ideas from you about how we can develop a growth mindset in classrooms. How do we help kids understand that effort matters? I was at a really great no excuses charter school today, and I was a little bit worried that kids were sort of spoon-fed, that there wasn't enough struggle. Yeah, Karen said reward small accomplishments. That's really important. And Karen, it's not only rewarding the work, but the effort, right? And sort of separating the quality of the work from the quality of the effort and responding to both of those. Benny said allowing choice and responsibility. I think that's super important, creating time during the day for kids to have choices. Jim said clear goals and projects. That's a great one. Self-directed path from Ren. A culture of risk-taking. That's super important, Rich, and it's easier to say than do, but a culture of risk-taking means giving kids some room to make some options. Yeah, where it's okay to fail, right? And it's productive failure, it's supported failure, but celebrating that's cool. When teachers become learners, I think that's super important. Maybe modeling growth mindset is maybe the most important thing. Helping your kids, letting them teach once in a while. Those are terrific additions. Keep them coming. Here's a list. I talked to 300 Connections teachers a few weeks ago, and here's some of the things that they talked about. It echoes many of you. Design learning, that's a great addition, Jim. Encouraging ownership, goal setting, as you said, options, allowing them to search for solutions. So a little bit of productive struggle, maybe more than we've been used to, not being so quick to give answers. I think the most important thing we can do in secondary schools is get the kids to write more, and with that a culture of revision, helping kids understand that good writing really takes effort and often lots of revisions. I think a digital portfolio can really help that, and it can help create celebrations of progress. So great list from all of you. It looks like we have a lot of the same things on the list. I want to turn our attention to maker mindset. It's been fun to see the rise of the maker movement. I'm on the Imagination Foundation board. We sponsored the Global Cardboard Challenge. We had about 120,000 schools participate, 140,000. In the narrow sense, maker is just building using open source materials, but more broadly, it's come to mean hacking, learning to code, working as a freelancer, sort of taking responsibility. And I think that's so important because I think the majority of young people going through our schools are at some point going to have to make a job, not get a job, that they'll spend some time self-employed. And for some kids, their entire career will be spent that way. So teaching self-direction, purpose-driven, iterative, and initiative, I think those are super important. Our friends at 4.0 Schools in New Orleans are really the best at this, and they talk about being user-centric, being curious, being iterative. I think they do a great job of teaching educators to gain a maker mindset. Here's what a maker mindset sounds like to me. I know how I learn. I ask why. This is important to me. I can create value. So I'd love to know how you think we can create a maker mindset, one that really values initiative. I know some of the same things are going to apply here. It's a picture of the art classroom at High Tech High. It's the High Tech High, in addition to being a STEM school, is the best art school in America. And they, in part because they do such a great mashup of science and math with art. Yeah, creative space and let them tinker. Thank you, Jim. E-STEM at Reynoldsburg. just made their library a makerspace. I think that's a great example. We have a couple features on Bracken Steam, a Vegas magnet is another place that, as Jim suggested, their library is a real makerspace. Reflection, creative thought during the day. It's nice. Any other additions? Leading projects that connect with interest. Yeah, I think, Rich, I think that's super important. That's the most important design opportunity of our time, of helping kids do more interest-based work that is really purposeful and connected to standards. So the paradox of interest-based plus standards-based. I think clubs like robotics and art and coding can be super important. Partners like Junior Achievement can help. Science fairs, I think, can be a great way to promote this. Publication, the student yearbook or a student newspaper can be great. Many of you did Hour of Code a few weeks ago. I think those are all great examples. Let's talk about the last one, team mindset, that collaboration really matters. Our friends at Partnership for 21st Century Skills and ed leaders have been preaching this for 20 years. Our friends at Castle that promote social emotional learning, I think, really appreciate collaboration skills. Here's what it sounds like in class. I belong here. I appreciate others. I can get the help I need. Together we can accomplish our goals. How can we promote a team mindset or a collaborative mindset in our classrooms? Maybe some of you can give us some examples of project-based learning that do a good job of that. Sort of team-based, project-based learning. That eSTEM at Reynoldsburg has in our last post on them, they have a triple block capstone project that 3 different credits, math, English, and social studies. It's team-based, but kids get a writing intensive and a math intensive. So I love the idea of big integrated projects, but with the scaffolding to help kids be successful. Jim mentioned Scratch programming. That's a great example, particularly in intermediate grades. Here's a couple more examples. Team projects, collaborative writing, team publishing, taking advantage of social learning on platforms like Edmodo. Ren talked about internships. I think that's terrific, giving kids the opportunity to succeed and fail in a real work setting. Mentoring can be really important in this space, and in a variety of student leadership opportunities. So mindset matters, and that's really the first chapter of Smart Cities. There's a quick recap. I think schools ought to pay more attention to mindset, to be explicit about it. Like DSST in Denver, give feedback on mindset every month to every student and faculty member. I'd like to spend a couple minutes on talent development. This is something we've learned in the last 20 years is super important. Cities like Houston have made dramatic improvement because they've taken a regional approach to talent development. They've used new leaders to train leaders. They've aggressively used Teach for America, but they've also done a great job of training their own staff. So talent development matters. Washington, D.C. is an exciting story on the rise. City Bridge Fellowship is a great example of identifying and supporting teacher leaders. They identify about 20 teacher leaders each year and give them a partial release, and they get to take a few school visit trips to New York and to the Bay Area. And the exciting thing is that after 2 rounds of City Bridge Fellowships, the city got a Next Generation Learning Challenge grant, and so they've been able to make new and transform schools grants. So all the teachers that have gone through the City Bridge Fellowship are now on planning teams for new and transformed schools. So DC has really become a great example of taking advantage of finding and building teacher leaders. On talent development, we think competency-based, blended, and personalized learning, just like for kids, is what teachers ought to take advantage of. We have a paper called Preparing Teachers for Deeper Learning. I think is worth a read. We wrote that with Karen Cater, and we're writing the leadership sequel to it right now. It's, I think, a good summary of how teachers should benefit from the same kind of learning experiences as kids. I'll wrap up with a couple comments on policy advocacy. In the book, I talk about how cities should pay attention to skill up and startup. Skill up meaning great learning experiences for young kids all the way to adult training to make learning a real priority citywide, and then paying attention to startups. I see a lot of cities chasing big factories with crazy incentives that gut school district funding, and instead I think they ought to be thinking a lot more about small businesses and startups. So that's the focus of Chapter 7 in Smart Cities. You know, what didn't make this deck was I wanted to cover the 5 policy priorities from iNACOL. Maybe somebody can add that link for me, but there's 5 policy priorities from iNACOL that describe steps that states can take to make a big difference. A real focus on competency-based learning and eliminating seat time, moving to, thanks J.O., it's a great report that summarizes competency-based learning, supporting teacher leaders, and then supporting next generation models. And I think that's a great short list for policy advocacy. So that's a really quick recap of the Smart Cities study that we did. The message that I tried to share at a Smart Cities Summit yesterday is that in the long run, learning is the most important economic development strategy, and schools can't do it alone. They need cities and nonprofit partners. They need university partners. They need a great web of early learning. And as K-12 educators, I think we need to focus on new tools and new schools or new learning environments as the big opportunity. Be happy to take additional questions and comments, and I really appreciate all of your ads all the way through.
Thank you, Tom. So as he said, please enter questions or comments or requests for
take a look at that
information
link that,
in the chat room below.
that Jonathan just shared. That's a great policy piece. Jim, that's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. So the answer is it depends. I think I would start with the what do we want learning to look like? That's the key question. What should kids know and be able to do? And then the LX question, what do we want the learning experience to look like? And then what kinds of tools will they need? And then finally, what kind of an environment would be the best? So I would start from that sequence, but specifically in terms of layout and furniture, I think the best example or the best answer is really just to visit as many new schools as you can. We have a blog called 100 Schools Worth Visiting. Take a look at the websites of the schools on that list that look interesting. take a look at the blog that I wrote on Metro 2 days ago and look at the pictures that come with that. I think that's very, very thoughtful space. On the bottom of that Metro blog, there's a list to the 10 design attributes that I like to see, and the key one that you and Rich have mentioned a couple times today is flexibility. The cool thing at Metro is they use barn doors to very quickly divide a space or to open a space. So having these flexible spaces that can go big to small super quick is really important. Great question for developing world. And Professor, I'm really excited about the potential for developing world. I'm an investor in Bridge International in Kenya. We probably have 400 very low-cost schools. They cost about $60 a year, producing very good elementary results. And I think the developing world opportunity set is a low-cost blended high school model that would build on the Bridge model using plastic tablets and open content in a blended format. So I think all of us working on blended learning here are helping to invent a future that will provide very good secondary education to the 500 million kids around the planet that don't have access to it. So it's a great question. I think it's a great opportunity. I would love to work on the Smart Cities report for the developing world. It'd be fun to modify our framework for emerging markets.
Tom, I think we had a question from
outside
yes,
expert.
Go ahead. I was just going to highlight that.
Rich?
Yes, thank you.
One from Rich. Outside expert content mentorship with students. That's a great example. So let me answer that in two ways. I'm on the board of Strive for College, which is pioneering a virtual mentoring for college. So this will be college kids mentoring high school students. The best example of PBL with external mentors is EduCurious. EduCurious.org. It's a Seattle startup that uses it's sort of PBL plus virtual mentoring. Michael Golden runs that. That is worth looking into. Summit Public Schools is working with EduCurious on building their 812 curriculum right now. But I love this idea. I think virtual mentoring is going to be huge, and it's just getting so much easier to use, Rich. So I think that's a great question. It's going to be much, much easier to get and keep people involved in schools. Thank you, Julia. That's a great addition. EduCurious, Nepris, and United Teach all port experts into the classrooms. Thanks. If you guys haven't seen the 4.0 school site, go take a look at that. We think every city needs something like this to incubate talent, tools, and schools. Every city needs a design lab to develop next generation models. If you don't have one of those, find a foundation to help you develop one. I'm talking about that at a Kansas City Foundation tomorrow.
I think we have time for a couple more questions if anyone has additional comments or questions.
Julia, what's the coolest thing you've seen in the last couple months? If you don't keep up with the Christensen blog, take a look at it this afternoon. Tom Arnett and Julia do a great job. they do a great job highlighting what's working. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is competencyworks.org. It's the most important online discussion of competency-based. And Jim, it's really my answer to your question of how do we blend these with Common Core. You know, I think the most important thing we can do to help young people meet Common Core objectives, at least in literacy, is to get them to write more. And I think the Common Core really demands that. And I think the only way to get kids in high school to write 500 words a day across the curriculum is in a blended environment, one where they have a collaborative writing environment like Google Docs or Office 360, where they can peer edit, and where a teacher can easily manage lots of document flow. That's just, I think, very difficult to do in an offline environment. So I think blended learning in both mathematics and literacy is essential to reaching Common Core objectives. Thank you, Julia. She talked about VLAC. Aspire is definitely worth looking at. That's a super high caliber team. Aspire is the biggest charter network on the West Coast, and why don't we mention Liz Arney's new book. She has a blended learning handbook that's worth taking a look at. She's the Aspire blended learning coach. Oh, Emily, I don't know. I'm so discouraged about the federal government right now. It's you know, today they did, the feds announced waivers for 40 colleges for competency-based learning. So it's exciting to see that. So I think there's generalized support at the Department of Education. You know, Maria Worthen is the policy lead at iNACOL and is working very hard to make sure that ESEA improves support for competency-based learning. So iNACOL is all over this subject. Thanks, J.O. Is that, whose book is that? Is that Liz's book? I don't know Rethink, so I'll have to take a look at that. Great. Oh, that's the recent policy piece by iNACOL and NGLC. Thank you. Great questions and additions. We appreciate it. Thanks for setting this up, Maya.
Great. Yes, thank you so much, Tom, and thanks everyone else for adding to the conversation as well as asking questions. I just wanted to call attention before everyone jumps off to the fact that we have the next in our series for teachers tomorrow, which is Thursday the 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And Peter Adashiro from Michigan Virtual will be presenting information on thinking like a learning engineer and an instructional design approach with research-backed practical application. So please join for that. And then the next in this leadership webinar series will be held next month on Wednesday, February 11th, same time. And we will be talking with Michael Horn, who, as mentioned before, is the author of Blended, which is kind of a field guide to implementing blended learning. So any last minute questions?
Thanks, Maya.
Okay, well, great. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and thank you, Tom and Jennifer, for adding all those links. And we will hope to run into everyone in a learning experience soon. Thanks, everyone.